Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. So, tis the season or tis the week, obviously, to talk about family, right? Grateful for family, but obviously, we get shaped and programmed to be in certain ways. And I posted recently in the parenting and family section the dysfunctional family roles. And I'm going to kind of go through it with you guys today. So, I'm going to link this video obviously in that section. So, there's that one PDF with you guys, I'm looking at the same image you guys are looking at. So the reason I want to talk about this, two parts right before I get into it. The first part is who better than family knows our triggers, knows our roles, knows our weak spots, and ideally we want to be the best. We want to bring out the best in one another, but we tend to get into these, all too familiar programs or dynamics in family, right? I only have one younger brother, and a lot of times it's easy to look at him as my younger brother. He's very smart. And even though I've, moved out and we tried to be, kind, I guess to some degree cordial, it's really hard, it's really easy to kind of get into that brother-sister mode immediately, right? And then again, with our parents, right? With our mom, with our dad, right? Take a little bit of an assessment. What relationship dynamic do you have with one parent, with the other? What about both in the same room, right? Who starts to triangulate, right? All these different things start to come out. And especially you guys, all of you are kind of more grown, right? I'm not working with toddlers or middle school kids. I'm working with a lot of times kids who are adults now who are trying to be their own person, who have their own habits, who probably have their own views. Some of you guys are married, have your own kids. You guys are breaking up. Like, you guys are just your own persons, right? People doing your own thing. And so obviously what happens when we come home, right? The same values, the same things start to come out, the same behaviors, the same what's important in this household. And it's a little bit tricky to navigate when you're now your own household, maybe, right? And so here's kind of a little reminder. Watch yourself when you get pulled into those dynamics. If you want to get into that dynamic, that's fine, right? But I remember I had a situation recently, and I use my life as an example, so I'm pretty transparent and see through in this space, I suppose. But I had a situation where my husband and we were gonna go out to for an activity, and we picked up my brother to join us, right? And I was very happy that my brother joined, seeing my husband and my brother as guys kind of bond. I like that. And I love including my family. Well, that's my brother, right? And we were talking about something, and my brother's very smart. He's very kind of factual based. And we all kind of got in this conversation, and I kind of realized, well, I didn't even realize it until later. My husband pointed it out, that I started to kind of get into this like nitpicky kind of space with him, kind of like bantering a little bit. I don't even know how to explain it. I guess I'm not as like, maybe I'm not as grounded and patient and kind and open as maybe I would with my husband, because our roles are very different. But with my brother, I just kind of get into it. Oh yeah, well, I did this and we did this, and did you, just that, like, I don't know. I just think of like sometimes like these like high school kids, right? That relationship that sometimes gets, that dynamic that gets evoked with my brother. And then later on, my family came over, and I'm not even kidding, but almost instantly I just remembered being sucked into our family dinner table. Like, mom does this, and then dad did that, and then my brother had to say this, and then I was like, in the middle, and then I'm all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I've totally lost my equilibrium, if I could say it like that. And I kind of look at my husband, and he's just like, there's a lot going on for only like 4 other people, right? And then I was talking in a certain way, and I'll be honest, all of a sudden I was like, right? Sometimes this happens after we say something. I said something something between my mom and my brother, what they were doing, and we're talking about food, something. But the way I said something, even I was like, what in the world? Like, I thought I was like really past some of these behaviors, or the way that I made a comment. Like, it just kind of sounded kind of immature, kind of snarky, kind of reminded me of like me being high school, or some like ungratefulness or bossiness came out of me. And I had to like pull back and be like, what am I doing? Like, that's not even who I am. Like, that's not even who I want to be. Like, I'm way more grounded and mature and calm and quiet and open. And I think like we just get so comfortable, right? Sometimes it's like our dirty laundry growing up. We get comfortable, like metaphorically speaking, to have our dirty socks or even our dirty underwear. I don't know, right? Whatever, right? My point is like our dirty room, our all that stuff, like people, our families have seen that, so it's a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, this is me, versus no, like I'm gonna have some boundaries. I'm not gonna talk like that anymore. I'm not gonna get sucked into that dynamic. I'm not gonna have a fight over here. I'm not gonna step over and boss my brother there. We're not doing that anymore. I'm elevated. My nervous system is above this. I'm a wife now, right? I'm now belonging to the Sedgwick household. That's my new family, right? And so I've even had this goal for myself, like how I even talked to my brother, of just speaking to him as a man, right? Because in my head, my program, he's my little brother, but at the same time, like he's not little. He's he's not little, right? And so it doesn't matter how old we are. We see this all the time. I just saw a movie recently. It was called Four Christmases. It was actually pretty funny. Where this guy comes home, and I think he's like in his 30s or 40s, and immediately his, big burly big brothers all attack him and they're knuckling, like, so super immature, but at the same time, like, that was their dynamic growing up, right? And so maybe in high school that was fun, and in college, whatever. But it's just, again, my point is it's a little different when we revert back into these old ways. If we want to be like that, that's fine. But if our goal is, I don't want to be sucked into those old programs. I don't want my nervous system to go back into fight mode when I'm triggered and yell at my mom. I don't want to get all bossy here. I don't want to like help out my sister here and enable her there. I don't want to be the one defending my other older sister, or whatever dynamics, right, you guys have. Oh, now my aunt's here. Oh, I don't want to be the one that's always, right? Who do you want to be? And I would even say, if you're watching this video before Thanksgiving or holidays, or just before even family get-togethers, take a breather and remind ourselves, who do we want to be? We have a member, right? Nadia made an amazingly beautiful post in her success story. And she talked about, before even going anywhere, she just sat and reflected, what are my values? What's important for me and my family? What do I like? And I urge you guys, do all of that for yourselves repeatedly. Like, what are your goals? What do you desire? Who are you? Who's the new you? What are the areas now you are working on? Having a heart that's more open, having more peace and relaxation in your tone. Maybe it's like walking in without any kind of entitlement and having just like openness and gratitude. Who are you? What are your values? And continue to like remind yourself that after, like, when you go into these settings, again, especially with family, because they're the ones that bring out this old original program within us. So let's kind of go into these dysfunctional family roles. And we can definitely morph and shift. Like, you can be in one dynamic with certain siblings, or I don't know, I guess you can be different dynamics, but I think we tend to lean more so towards one or the other. So in my experience, let's say like this, there's no such thing as a perfect family. We all have our tendencies, but it's good to know. So the reason why we even have these dysfunctional family roles, the origins of this at least, was from codependency type of families. And originally, I think the way this was created was, there's the taker and the giver, right? See, there's that. The one who's doing all these different things, and then the one who's enabling and taking all the responsibility. Technically speaking, I believe it was in the 1950s. It was around Alcoholics Anonymous, and there were some studies done. Why were there a lot of actually very successful men who were in these Alcoholic Anonymous groups? I mean, they were like CEOs and bosses, and it just made no sense for these like researchers or whoever was studying this dynamic of like, you would think they would just be a bunch of homeless people or something, but they're like suit and tie kind of men, alcoholics, coming into these groups. And I started to dig in and research, like, how are these people so quote unquote successful? I don't understand. And they all found out that almost all of them had enabler wives. Now, when we say addiction, that could be, I don't know, anything on this like spectrum of intensity. It could be literal addiction. It could be some kind of narcissistic type of part. Like, think of something like that's consuming the family, some kind of plague. Maybe, I don't know, I'll take a stab at it. It could even be someone who's like highly crazy religious, and it's church and religion and church and da da da, and then him having a spouse who's always like, yes, 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 you know. I don't know, that's my opinion. But my point is, there was always a enabler wife. I'm gonna look at my resources. The enabler wife, she was basically, there's another better word somewhere. No, I think it's the enabler. Yeah. Okay, so I watched this video, forgot what it's called. It's from the 80s, but it was like this wife. She, you know, her husband's drunk or driving or some kind of issue. She's the one calling, you know, his work and letting the secretary know that guy was gonna come late. She would be picking him up in the middle of the night. She would be like paying for his bills. She's always running around dressing him up. She literally took all the brunt, all the work, all the responsibility, all the consequences off of this man, right? It could be either or, right? It doesn't matter if it's man or husband. However, she took away all the consequences that, like, why wouldn't that guy, the addict, I guess you can say it like that, or the person with the addiction or the problem behavior or whatever, why would they not continue doing what they're doing, right? And this happens all the time in families. Now, I'm talking about addiction to show a pretty, like, I don't know, exaggerated example, but just think of, like, in your household, who is the more extreme parent or whatever. I don't know, right? Anyways, so why would these men in the Alcoholics Anonymous group not continue to drink and do their thing? They still had a job, their clothing was still washed, they always had food, they never had to worry about these like voicemails and phone calls. The wife took off all the consequences, okay? So see those two extreme dynamics? You have to have one to have the other. So that, I guess this chart says victim. It could be chemically dependent. Remember, guys, it doesn't have to be. It just think of some kind of extreme, someone again attached to something extreme. I'll just say they could be hostile. They could be manipulative, aggressive, blaming, charming. Yeah. Rigid values. I mean, they're in their own kind of chaos. And then the chief enabler, closest emotionally to the victim, because that's the bond, that's the glue that holds these marriages or dynamics or friendships or whatever together. They are the one that's protecting the family. There's a self-righteousness, super responsible, sarcastic, passive, physically sick, martyr. Anyways, right? This is that person that tries to like so protect and keep the family together, where again, like, what, especially if that's the woman, what feminine identity? That is extreme survival mode, okay? It's really hard to again be in tune with who you are when you're so like literally mothering the other person in their dysfunction. So let's break it down. Technically speaking, I guess we have four types of kids that come out of this dynamic, right? And I've seen it. I've seen families literally embody this. In this movie that I saw, they had four kids and each one was literally one of the kids. So the family hero, oftentimes, right, that older child, they're that A student, they're involved in everything, they're involved in sports, they're smart, they take care of themselves, they go to school, they do their homework. And so what happens is, right, you guys have that chart yourselves. Follows rules, high achiever, good kid, very responsible, seeks approval, right? I mean, but deep inside, there's a lot of guilt, hurt, and inadequacy. They're the ones that essentially kind of caretake of the family. And so here's the thing. The reason why this is called the family hero, the golden child, or whatever, is they make the family look good. And so what's problematic about this is now that is that kid's identity. Okay, that's where sometimes those kids get that people pleaser, approval seeking, recognition, approval, looking for validation. I need to be that all-star kid. And that's not to say that this kid doesn't genuinely love, let's say, the sports or academics or whatever that they're in, but there is oftentimes on a psychological, emotional level some kind of pressure to do well, because if the family already looks dysfunctional, someone's got to look good. Someone's going to represent and save the family somehow, right? And so, like in this movie, and then even the kids I've worked with, right? It's like, well, we're not like complete garbage. Like, I do well in school, you know, these kids, or I have this, or I'm the first one that bought a house, or like my family is not a complete failure. And the thing is, like, okay, but your worth and identity is not attached to family, because even if dad is or mom is dysfunctional in their own ways, as long as you're doing what you're doing later as an adult out of your own free will and freedom, that's what's important, right? But if we're trying to hide, mask, cover, we're motivated for reasons to, again, caretake the family and make the family look good on the outside, or the kid that's always at church or doing good churchy stuff. So at least we have one Christian kid, one, whew, as you can see how much pressure falls on that kid. And I remember the movie that I was watching. I'm gonna have to find the movie and tag the name. It's like really old. It was very educational, but I liked it. But it was the oldest child was a girl, and she was a lawyer, and she just still never felt good enough. She was like, her dad was like on the hospital bed for like the 50th time. Like, the whole family comes together for a crisis. Oh, this is our only time together. It's like literally their Thanksgiving is in the hospital, right? When dad's almost dying again from alcohol. She'd always try to sneak him, like, Dad, I got the promotion, and Dad, I did that, and every time the dad's like, oh, I love you so good, so, that's my girl. And this woman is like, in the movie at least portrayed as older, married, but like, she's like, I don't have time for kids, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And her whole life became career. I don't believe because she genuinely wanted to be a lawyer 24/7. I believe it's because she got so much validation, worth value from the school, educational, professional, academic aspect growing up that just became her entire identity. I don't remember if I'm making this up now. I don't know if her husband actually even wanted a kids or wanted to marry or something, but she almost was sabotaging her own love life, her own real possibility of emotional connection, some kind of bond with her husband, because she was still literally seeking for that attention from dad and mom, I suppose. So see which ones you identify with. Let's go to the next one. The mascot, the family clown. Okay, so immature, fragile, cute, hyperactive, distracting. I mean, these are those, it's like, even think about your own families or your own cousins. I think of the kids in school, like, who are the funny ones? And when I look back at like the kids even at my school growing up, the funniest class clowns, when I got to know like their family, it was always like crazy dysfunctional, like parents split, drugs, etc. And in some ways, I think these kids kind of cope through humor. Like, oh, we're fine. It's not all that bad. It's not a big deal. Ha ha ha. No surprise, in this movie, the mascot class clown, literally his job was being some kind of comedian. Literally. Because it's like, oh, what better way than to deal with this pain than just poke some fun? Oh, look, Dad, you got a 12th bottle. Ha ha ha. Like, right, there's a lot of, like, as you can see, fear, anxiety, insecurity within this child. But I don't know, they're the ones that create the laughter. What's the word? They make things like more lighthearted because everything is just so like panicked and death. And the mom's always like, oh my goodness, the next trauma, the next crisis. Oh, but dad's this. Oh, now dad's doing that, And so this is the kid that almost kind of grounds with humor. Oh, mom, don't blah, 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 And a lot of times they were frustrated with him and his humor, this kid. But it's like, I don't know, what else does he do? He wasn't invested in emotionally. There's a lot of immaturity. He just kind of, again, jokes around. No big deal. Oh, that's what we always do. Well, of course we're yelling at each other. That's what we always do when we're on the hospital bed with dads in bed, Oh my goodness. Sometimes um well, someone once said this thing like, oh, in every joke there's actually only an ounce of joke, the rest of it is truth or something, I don't know. But anyways, that's that family clown. It's very hard to get him. I've had some clients like that, very hard to get him to be a little bit serious. And then you have to really ask if that person's even ready to like look within and do like reflect, do the deeper work. And a lot of these people, like, they're so emotionally immature and fragile, like they can't even look on the ends. Like, it's too much. It's easier to just kind of laugh. Oh, yeah, this always looks at, you know, I'm always this, or ha ha ha, you know. But it's like when you really sit with their raw heart, I mean, these humans don't even know what to do with that. It's too much, too much. Next kid is the scapegoat, also known as the problem child. Of course, they're hostile, defiant, rule breaker, and trouble. So in the movie, the kid that was this was the kid who was always getting in fights at school, was always getting suspended. You know, I actually worked with a kid like that. His dad, both mom and dad were like on drugs. Mom actually ended up dying during the school year, unfortunately. But this kid, like, I even know this, okay, and I was the counselor. It is so easy to be like, ah, you're the problem. Like, you're always getting in trouble. You're always this. Like, you're always looking for something. Like, you're always stirring up drama. You're, and it's so easy to be like, you're the problem. And hence the problem child, the scapegoat. And the thing is, like, this kid, she, right, absorbs a lot of that negative, if I could say, attention, so that it takes off of the tension and negative attention off of the family. So instead of the real problem being highlighted, let's say parents and their issues, mental, emotional, physical, substance, whatever, religious, it's like, instead of the parents taking responsibility, it's always like, let's call him Tyler. Oh yeah, Tyler. Oh, this family keeps having issues because Tyler. Oh, Tyler did something else. Oh, Tyler's not at church. Or Tyler. And the reality is Tyler is only a manifestation, if I could say, almost like a symptom of the bigger issue in the family, right? Deep inside, these kids, even that kid I worked with, there's many of them, right? Rejection, hurt, guilt, jealousy, anger. A lot of neglect. Like, who it was like interesting working with like those kids, because I remember once kind of alluding to this kid's mom who's irresponsible and a drug addict, and part of him is like, yeah, I know she's a loser. But also, like, biologically, there's usually, like, no one wants to hear anything bad spoken ill of their parent. They'll go into protective mode, right? That's biology. And so he never wants to admit his mom's a loser, but then a couple times I'll hear him be like, how stupid, how pathetic is my family. So it's this, like, I don't know, like, if you can't get your adult parent to change. I remember he did break down one time. It was amazing. He felt like, why can't I be a big enough, good enough reason for my mom finally get off drugs? Why don't I matter enough for her? And so how else did they drown out that anger? They get in fights, they physically push it out, they just get in trouble. I mean, that kid was always in trouble. Again, it's easy to blame fingers at him, but he's only the manifestation of a lot of neglect and rejection, right? So let's move on to okay. By the way, guys, again, I keep saying this, we're always exaggerating or emphasizing extreme sides of the spectrum, these examples, but just kind of check, where are you within yourself? And oftentimes, like, the bigger the family, the easier to kind of see like who falls in which category. But the last category of type of role, I guess you can say, is the lost child, the forgotten one, the forgotten child. So they're shy, quiet, they're obsessed with, I mean, I say obsessed, but they're in their fantasy land, they're in their world, they're in their books, they're solitary, they're attached to things, not people, right? There's that emotional disconnection. These are like the girl in this movie, she was, oh, it breaks my heart. That poor sweet thing, she was like always hiding, I think, behind her gigantic glasses, and she was literally after school. I mean, I think her little nervous system could not handle the chaosness and crisis and overstimulated home. right? From the brother laughing to the other brother yelling to the other sister being high strung with her grades and stuff. This girl was always at school. She voluntarily stayed late at every school project. She was involved heavily in art class, and it was like the saddest thing ever because she had this big art show going on, and she had this art thing going on, and she didn't even tell anyone in her family until I think they got a letter saying, congratulations, you won this art thing or scholarship or something. And then her mom was like, what? Why didn't you tell us? Like, we want to be there. We want to celebrate you. And the girl's like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Why does she talk like that? Because she's had plenty of other examples where there's other chaos and drama going on, where dad's frequent hospital visits plus work issues plus brother's expulsion plus all these other things that she's already trained to feel let down, neglected, okay? Not a priority in that family. So she didn't even bother telling anyone. Again, I don't remember if the teacher finally reached out to the parent. I forgot. But the family was, I believe, like, no, we're gonna come. And then like the day of the actual award or art show or whatever, I mean, the family still couldn't come because something else happened, and that was kind of that priority. It stole attention from her. So how else does this child cope when she's feeling hurt, anxious, rejected? Again, she falls deeper into her own world, deeper into her art projects. Those are often times the kids who have that avoidant attachment style, or I guess it could go either way. But they're the ones that are in their own world. It's really hard to connect and depend on humans when you've been raised with other people's issues and stuff being of higher importance than yours. So let's kind of break it down now, okay? This is our very educational video, but which kid do you tend to fall into? Which role? Whether it's in your marriage or when you're with your original family, right? And be careful. Ask yourself, am I being sucked into this role because of certain dynamics or problems? Or like, I don't know, are you choosing, by free will? Which I'd say that if you're really healthy, you don't really fall into any of them, right? Because it's not, how do I say this? You're not doing this stuff for the family. Now you're your own person. And I'll be honest, like, I remember processing years ago with my first coach, feeling a lot of pressure internally, whether it was put on over me, but there was this like, oh, you're a counselor, you're a therapist, you're this, you understand that. I mean, I remember having people call me up all the time and be like, can you talk to my son about God? Or, and then they would sometimes low-key, sometimes I felt a little manipulated, but at the same time, like overly put this like savior complex stuff on me. Yes, and I'm the oldest, and I've done school. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I do enjoy, but I started to realize, like, where am I falling in this category of caretaker of the family or the counselor or this or that, And I have a situation with my brother where when he was in high school, he went through an accident and it messed up his vision and a whole host of problems. And I just remember like watching him struggle through a lot of that, and then watching my parents struggle watching that. I mean, you guys, if y'all have a family, y'all know how these heartstrings get pulled, and then who do you save and what do I do, And I was always like the fixer in a lot of issues. And then even romantic relationships growing up, the ones that didn't succeed, thank God. Guess who was the fixer? Guess who, on a like I could have ended up honestly being the chief enabler. If Jesus didn't save me, and probably could have been with some kind of victim issue person. And thank God that's not perfect, but like we're not in those extremes. And so I remember processing with my coach being like, man, sometimes I feel this pressure, whether it's internal or sometimes my mom will be like, oh, why don't you go talk to your brother about this and that, that triangulation stuff. And I remember processing with my coach, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's his own person. My brother has his own life. But like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I feel guilted. I feel pressured. I'm worried to not say something, but then I don't want to go say something because someone told me to go say something to him, whether it's about God or life or encouragement or whatever, And my coach did such a beautiful job of explaining this. She said, in the grand scheme of life, God decided in his infinite wisdom that your best role the best, like in relationship to my brother, would be his sister. Not his counselor, not his teacher, not even his mom, not even his like best friend, but God decided you would, when you fully embody the role of a sister, that would be the best supporting role for your brother. So like, so in his life, right, he's the main character in his life, and the supporting role, Elena, by God, was chosen to be his sister, just like my mom was chosen to be his mom, whatever, you know, infinite wisdom. And that like helped me so much. It helped me relax. And just like she was like, and in God's infinite wisdom, he decided that you would be the best daughter, okay, for your parents. Not their sister, not their friend, not their, you know, right? And so just ask yourself, right, when you're, and this is a problem, and the problem is on earth when we inverse those roles, right? When we start to operate out of a role that God never designed, biologically speaking. When we're the parents to our parents, we see that a lot. I see it a lot of, oftentimes with the family hero, caretaker of the family. She ends up almost parenting the parents oftentimes because they're overly responsible. They're the ones that are like, did we do this? Did we pay the bills? Oh, we should do this. Okay, we should do it. Don't forget, we have Christmas going on. Okay, I'll go invite people, you know. So take a deep breath and relax. Thanksgiving, Christmas, or just regular days, remind yourself, you, especially all you girls who struggle with family dynamics, and specifically if we're talking about like a lot of these father-mother wounds, you are the best. In God's wisdom, the best role you could have is being their daughter. You can still be your own woman, and don't get me wrong, right? You belong to your own family if you're married, but you're not their parent. You're not their boss. You're not their scheduler. You're not their moral police. You're not their like baptizing priest, right? Like, you guys get what I'm saying, right? You guys can kind of relax and remember, I'm the daughter, but now as an adult, I get to choose and decide who and what I want to be and what I want to do, okay? And if you want to bring 10 dishes to Thanksgiving, and that's because you truly desire that and you love that, and that's not your self-sacrifice schema acting up, then wonderful, okay? But if you are ordered to bring 10 different dishes, and then your mascot family clown sibling doesn't have to bring anything, okay, you get to decide what are you going to do with that. I don't know. So kind of on that end, I thought Thanksgiving was going to be a good time to kind of introduce this family role topic, because when we get together, especially with their siblings, especially when we have a lot of it's so interesting to see our old patterns kind of come up, right? So may you be encouraged. Hopefully this was helpful. But let me know your comments and let's talk later.